Welcome to First. I'm Mark Eichman, along with Shirley Min and Nichelle Polston. What do the results from Tuesday mean to Delaware and the nation? We look back at Election Day with our State of Play panel and look ahead with Governor Markell.
25 years ago, Stephen Pinnell terrorized Newcastle County. We join with Delaware Today magazine to revisit the impact of his murderous crime spree.
Also this week on First, man's best friend is seen through the eyes of famous artists. That's our first experience. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
First Look this week dives into the impact of Tuesday's vote. Will the Republican strategy make a difference a few years from now? We'll ask the State of Play guys. What are Governor Markell's plans for the state as he heads into the final 2 years of his term? We'll ask him. He's coming up in about 10 minutes. First, a review of Tuesday night. For the first time in 20 years, a Delaware Republican won an open seat for statewide office. That winner was Republican Ken Simpler, who will be Delaware's next treasurer. He hopes to bring some stability to the office in what has been a tumultuous year for the Treasury.
So I have about 2 months to really make some important personnel decisions, and I hope I get the opportunity to actually meet with some of the Treasury people now. It would be a great boost to me to start in the new year with the chance to get with those 24 people sooner rather than later. Organizations, at the end of the day, as you know, they're about people, and I'm going to be inheriting a team. They don't know me. I don't know them yet. I know that morale is it's been difficult to be in the Treasurer's office these last year, several months. So getting everyone back rallied around the idea that we can be a center of excellence in finance for Delaware.
Simpler took nearly 54% of the vote over Democrat Sean Barney in a race that grabbed headlines after incumbent Democrat Chip Flowers dropped his re-election bid just weeks before the primary.
Even though tonight did not turn out the way I had hoped, I am more committed than ever to helping make our state better. The challenges Delaware families face are not going away, and neither is my desire to broaden opportunity in the first state, to help rise the economic tide, to help build our middle class. I will always be committed to those goals.
Auditor candidate Brenda Mayrack was also on the losing end for Democrats in her bid to unseat Republican auditor Tom Wagner. But like Barney, she vowed to keep working.
I decided to run for state auditor for many reasons, but the biggest one was that I wanted to give back to a state that has given me so much opportunity. And I am disappointed, but nothing about what I feel has changed. I'm grateful to this state and to all of you who have supported and encouraged me, and I plan to continue working to make sure that every Delawarean has access to the opportunities that I've had.
Democrats dominated at the top of the ticket, though, with both Senator Chris Coons and Congressman John Carney winning re-election. While both men touted their ability to work with Republicans in Congress during their campaigns, they'll get a chance to prove that as Republicans strengthened their numbers in Congress and now have control of both the Senate and House.
And I got to tell you, I don't relish, based on what I've seen tonight already, I don't really relish going back to Washington, D.C., to where I go to work on your behalf every day, I know I can do it, actually.
If the Republicans take control of the Senate and conduct themselves the same way they have in the House and simply try to repeal over and over the Affordable Care Act or the Dodd-Frank Act and force the president to veto it, we may well end up in a place where there's another government shutdown, where there's another fiscal cliff. I think that would be tragic. I don't think the United States has 2 years for us to sort this all out and wait for the next election. I think we need to begin working together now in a deliberate and positive way.
I think there are going to be lots of opportunities, but it's going to be, as I've been doing the last several years, working with Republicans on the other side of the aisle.
Delaware Lieutenant Governor Matt Dehn will leave his job 2 years early after he was elected to be Delaware's next Attorney General. He'll take over for fellow Democrat Beau Biden.
We have about 2 months now between today and when I take office, and it's very important to have an orderly transition between administrations, so we're going to be spending a lot of time trying to make sure that that happens and that the office is run very efficiently from day one when I get there.
The biggest headline from election night is probably the Ken Simpler win, as the Republican will take over the state treasurer's office from embattled state treasurer Democrat Chip Flowers, who dropped out of the race during the primary season. And following the election and in his victory speech, Simpler sort of gave a veiled reference towards Chip Flowers, saying that one of the first things he's got to do as he works his transition to the treasurer's office is kind of get rid of all the political drama and really focus everybody in the office on the job of managing the state's money.
See if that office goes back to the back burner where it had been for so long, pre-Chip. You know, then we have our congressional delegation, Senators Chris Coons, Tom Carper, Congressman John Carney. They are now going to return to Washington in an all-Republican-controlled House and Senate. That'll be kind of an interesting thing to watch.
It will be interesting to watch, and they talk all the time about working across the aisle. Now let's see if they can do it when it's fully Republican-controlled Congress.
And curious what the new blood, the dynamic that the new blood will bring to D.C.
For sure.
Well, our coverage has just begun for this weekend. Mark and I, though, are going to clear the set to make room for State of Play.
State of Play features Stephanie Hansen, former Newcastle County president, and now with the law firm of Young, Conaway, Stargett, and Taylor, as is Michael Stafford. He is an attorney and MSNBC contributor. Okay, so let's pretend Charlie Copeland is here in the studio, head of the Republican Party. What questions would you ask him?
Well, I think Charlie's definitely happy. I mean, it's been a turnaround. This election cycle, obviously, Republicans have done better. They've hit bottom, and they've rebounded. They've won a statewide race, Ken Simpler's win. I think for Charlie, though, and for the party as a whole, the real question is, can Republicans win statewide races in presidential cycles, and can they win statewide races where economic policy, environmental policy, fiscal policy, education reform, where those kind of the social issues are going to factor into the campaign? When you look at Ken Simpler's blueprint for winning the treasurer's race, Ken didn't talk about economic policy. Ken didn't talk about social issues. He didn't talk about any of the red meat that you've got to get into if you want to run for governor or for any of our federal offices. He kept it narrowly focused on the job of the treasurer's office, which, beyond signing paychecks, really doesn't amount to much. And so can a Republican run for one of those other offices, talk about economics, talk about social issues in a way that doesn't antagonize the base and isn't an anathema to a majority of Delaware voters? I personally, I think the answer to that is no. We'll see in 2 years.
Yeah, really, the question is how and is he going to kind of bridge the gap between the far right and the Tea Party and the 9/12 Patriots and the moderate Republicans, of which I think there are a few. I think there are a lot, and they have been very quiet, and I think have been disillusioned by what they have seen as far as leadership in the party. And now the question for Charlie is, okay, you're on an upswing. You've got these two disparate groups that you need to somehow either bring them together enough to continue the momentum, or create, I guess, maybe more of a visible distance because you think one is a stronger base than the other. I'm going to be really curious to see how he does this.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the Valenzuela primary that Simpler went through in the treasurer's race, that's a different animal in a race for lieutenant governor or governor, because her attacks on social issues and on economic issues are more viable in one of those races. People are going to care a lot more about it if you're running for governor, if you're running for Congress, and you have a primary to the right. It's going to push him more in that direction.
Well, certainly new faces in Dover, but the leadership will stay the same. How do you think things will shape up next spring?
Well, Pete's going to be very lonely as the only Democrat from Sussex County.
Yeah.
Pete Schwarzkopf is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that he will be fine. I mean, the majority is still in the Democrat hands, but I think he's lost a few of his friends down there, and it's going to feel lonely down in Sussex County.
When you look at the House caucus battle last year, I mean, at least 3 of Pete and Valerie Longhurst's key supporters are no longer there, including Becky Walker from the 9th. How that shakes out this year, I think we'll see.
Okay. Well, obviously, everything depends on the economy. Let's assume everything remains the way they are now. What do you think Markell's last 2 years will be like?
Can we have more initiatives? I mean, are we going to roll out an initiative every month? We've got schools, we've got water, we've got roads. What's left? How many more big initiatives can we have? I'd like to see one initiative actually come all the way to fruition. I think that's the key. He's put so many different visions out there on a range of different issues. Does he have the political clout now in what is going to be possibly a more, I mean, he is a lame duck governor at this point. Nobody's going to be out campaigning on his coattails again. Does he have the political clout in Dover to push anything through at this point?
I don't think that he's going to get now the gas tax or the water tax that he was looking at, because now clearly the voters have said enough taxes is enough, and we're making our voice heard. I mean, I think there's a general discontent with the Obamacare. I think that kind of shades over into the governor's race for Delaware. I think it's going to be really, really tough for him to get an increased tax, particularly the folks that were supportive of those taxes, even kind of mildly in the General Assembly, have now just had, many of them in the House of Representatives have just had to stand in a campaign in which they were beaten over the head because of the, the gas tax.
Yes.
And that was going to be the easier one than the water tax. So I don't see either of those two things happening.
It's going to be harder for him to enforce discipline, particularly in the House caucus.
Okay, well, we have to have you guys back sometime soon. Thanks so much, Stephanie and Mike Stafford. We appreciate it, and thank you guys for pulling this double duty. And, of course, being a part of State of Play. This interview can be found on newsworks.org/Delaware. Click the drop-down box at the top of the page.
Coming up on First, Stephen Pinnell was one of Delaware's most notorious killers. First and Delaware Today revisit his legacy 25 years later. And who doesn't love a dog? Come and experience these faces and let all the stresses of the day melt away.
Governor Jack Markell is our first person this week. Now, Wednesday, Governor, we were talking politics, and today we want to look at what's ahead for Delaware. So can we assume that improvements to our state's infrastructure, as well as cleaning up our waterways, is going to remain a priority for you come January with the new General Assembly?
Well, I certainly think that continued investment in our transportation infrastructure is important. Obviously, I made some proposals in that respect last year. They didn't go anywhere. And so I'll need to have some conversations with the members of the General Assembly. I think most of them also believe that improving infrastructure is important. How we pay for it is another issue, and we'll have to see if there's some, something that we can agree to.
The fact that it won't be an election year, what kind of impact and effect do you think it will have now on passing any kind of legislations for a gas tax or an annual water fee?
Well, I think the fact that it's not an election year helps. But that being said, we. It's never easy because the members of the General Assembly, like I, want to be sure that we're getting the best possible bang for the buck that our taxpayers spend. We recognize it's their money, and we have to get them a good return on that investment. So I think there will be some conversations along those lines, and we'll see if we can, get to a solution.
Gas prices are hovering around $3. If gas prices this time last year or last year when you were trying to pass gas tax were about what they are now, do you think you would have had an easier time?
I don't know. I mean, I think, it was clear the members of the General Assembly were very concerned, and I think rightfully so. I welcome, their concern because I share it any time that we're asking anybody to pay more for anything. That's a high bar. And but that being said, I know that people expect our roads and bridges to be in good shape, and we're going to have to it's going to have to be solved at some point. It would be nice if we could solve it now, but that'll really depend upon whether or not the members of the General Assembly and our administration can come to terms on something.
You have 2 years left. I mean, has that sunken in yet?
Yes and no. I mean, I think I wake up every day really enthusiastic about the job that I do, and I think one of the things that's just very clear to me is, we only have a couple years left, and so there's still a lot that we want to do. We've got a great team in my cabinet, in the governor's office. We have a lot of great folks in the General Assembly, and so I'm just looking forward to working with all of them to make as much progress as we can on the economy, on education, on our health care, infrastructure, the environment. We have a number of issues that are really important.
Any specific legislation that you'd like to see the General Assembly tackle once they're all sworn in January?
I've mentioned a number of times the need to continue to improve some of the things we do around criminal justice. We incarcerate more people in Delaware than the national average in a country that incarcerates more than the world average, and it doesn't really keep us safer. So we made some progress last year. I expect to continue to focus there. I think we need to focus on reforming our substance abuse treatment and addictions issues, because a lot of people suffer from that as well. But we'll continue to focus, very largely on the key issue of the economy, jobs, education, workforce training, and the like.
Do you see death penalty coming up again?
I don't know. It's something that we'll have to see. You know, last year it passed the Senate, did not pass the House. If it does come back up, it's certainly a conversation I'd be more than willing to have.
The economy, obviously, one of your priorities, as you mentioned. Your focus on those jobs and bringing those jobs to Delaware has taken you all over the world. Any international trips that you have coming up?
I don't have anything planned at the moment. You know, we do continue. We just an Israeli company just told us they're going to be locating here down in Newark. You know, the good news is we've definitely made progress. Our job growth has exceeded the national average for just about 2 years. Every month for about 2 years. In fact, over the last year, our job growth has been amongst the fastest in the whole country. I think only Florida on the East Coast has been faster. So we're moving in the right direction. Lots of excitement, but we know we've got more to do, because as long as there's a single Delawarean who wants to work and who isn't working, then none of us can be satisfied.
Can we talk about the new detox center that's coming to downstate Delaware? That is going to be state funded by the General Assembly, correct?
Right, yeah.
State run?
Well, I think that is all to be worked out. I mean, oftentimes we work with contractors. I think that, you know, the bottom line here is we've heard loud and clear, and this is an issue that I've focused on for a while now. My wife, Carla, has had an important part of this conversation just because of her knowledge of the field as well. We've heard from a number of legislators about the importance that they place on it, and for that matter, we hear from members of the public. There are so many people in Delaware, there are so many people in the country who are dealing with addictions issues, and you know, we talk a lot about addictions being a disease, and it is. And if that's true, we need to treat it like the disease that it is and make sure that people have the treatment options available. And the fact is we just haven't had the sufficient options. It's something we're going to have to continue to work on.
I know there's been a lot of positive feedback, though, from that news. Governor Jack Markell, thank you so much. We thank you again for your time, and we will be watching and reporting on your efforts. You can watch this interview when you click on the First Person tab online at newsworks.org/Delaware.
This is the e-newsletter you can get when you sign up at WHYY.org/first. It'll give you an idea of what's planned for First. If you want to watch us online, you can do that on our First page as well.
It's been 25 years since the 1989 conviction of a Delaware serial killer who terrorized the Route 40 corridor, preying on young women in 1987 and 1988. We teamed up with Delaware Today magazine for the story of Stephen Pennell. We hear from both the prosecutor and the undercover cop who helped break the case.
His eyes were blank, cold, and there was no life to him.
That's the feeling Renee Tashner, an undercover cop at the time, got after a brief conversation with Stephen Pennell, who stopped to pick her up along Route 40 in 1988, an area where prostitutes were known to frequent. Renee's short encounter helped the case tremendously thanks to quick thinking.
I pretended to be interested in his van because I could tell there was something, you know, like a carpet or something just everywhere. So I had him turn the light on, and when he turned the light on, my heart stopped because it was just covered in blue carpet.
The carpet fibers startled Renee because the unique fibers were found on some of Pennell's victims. The disappearances of 23-year-old Shirley Ellis, 31-year-old Catherine DeMauro, and 22-year-old Michelle Gordon were all linked to Pennell. The women were tortured and mutilated.
Sex is not an element. Sex is not important to the offender. It is the hunt, and it's very much like a predatory type of animal.
Pennell was also linked to the disappearance of this woman, 26-year-old Kathleen Meyer, whose body has never been found.
This man was everyone's nightmare, but he looked like your average Joe.
Eventually arrested, charged, and put on trial, Pennell just didn't seem to fit the description of a serial killer. He was a local guy, married and had children, and worked as an electrician. The seemingly perfect character posed a challenge for prosecutor Kathleen Jennings.
He was well prepared. He had his story down. My goal was to let the jury see who he really was.
Jennings was able to get Pinnell out of his comfort zone by having him step away from the witness stand to answer questions about his van. His answers were spontaneous, allowing the jury to see another side.
It's the biggest case I've ever tried, and the most profoundly life-altering, I think, for a prosecutor was for me, because I still think about those victims.
Thanksgiving Day, 1989, Pinnell was found guilty and convicted of murdering Ellis and DeMauro. There was a hung jury in Gordon's case. Still, Pinnell was sentenced to serve life in prison in 1990. After court appeals disputing evidence, Pinnell was eventually indicted yet again, this time for the murders of Gordon and Meyer. But Pinnell pled no contest to the murders, never admitting to the crimes. And, in a strange twist, Pinnell asked to be put to death. He was later executed by lethal injection.
The court order to execute Stephen Brian Pinnell on March 14, 1992 has been carried out.
A total of 5 women from 1987 to 1988 actually went missing. The 5th woman was 27-year-old Margaret Finner. Her body was found near the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal, but Pinnell was never charged with her death due to lack of evidence. At this time, I'd like to introduce and welcome writer Jeff Murdoch of Delaware Today magazine, who can share more about the case. Why now? What's interesting about this case?
Well, this month is the 25th anniversary of his conviction, and I think it's interesting because he's the only documented serial killer in the history of Delaware.
And then what about the execution? I understand he never said anything.
That's right. Law enforcement officials were hoping that he would reveal the location of one of his victims that was never found, or at least confess to the crimes, but he never did either. He didn't say anything.
Not in his, I guess he was given the opportunity to have some last words, and he did not take that opportunity to share. But prosecutor Kathleen Jennings also told me what was interesting is that the group of women that he stalked actually sent her some flowers.
That's right. Well, Pinnell was stalking prostitutes along Route 40, and after Jennings secured a conviction, she received a bouquet of flowers at her desk that said, the card read, from the girls of Route 40, thanks for making us feel like we matter.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add at all, Jeff?
Just that it's a very interesting case.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Jeff Murdoch of Delaware Today magazine. For those of you at home, you can find this story and more at newsworks.org/Delaware.
And that cartoon pop, of course, means it's time for the real Rob Torno. So, Rob, what's your big takeaway from this week's elections? Big thoughts?
So I guess the big takeaway is the fact that a Republican actually won a statewide office in Delaware. Ken Spimpler, was managed to oust Sean Barney. I think that's kind of memorable. I mean, it's only for state treasurer. I don't think Republicans should get out of control about this. But it does show some weaknesses if you have a Democrat who might not run a good campaign or might not have a good message versus a Republican who's actually qualified, doesn't go off the rails like Wade did with Ebola. You know, so to Republicans in the state, you can win elections if you have credible, decent candidates.
That's kind of the roadmap for the future, I guess. And your cartoon this week, a little bit of a election hangover. Take us through what you're drawing.
Yeah, so every time we have a lead up to an election, we have ads everywhere, we have mailers, we have signs. Everyone gets so overwhelmed by it. And then immediately afterwards, we start talking about 2016. Is Beau Biden going to run? What about Gordon? So, yeah, I just kind of want to have the point after the election just be after the election. Just let us deal with the people that we've elected now before worrying 2 years down the road.
So what do you does Beau Biden win? I'm just doing the exact opposite of what you want us to do.
If you talk to him, you let me know.
Yeah, we'll be working on that. Rob, thanks so much. You can read Rob on the many pages of newsworks.org. He's also on Twitter. Check him out at Rob Torno. Thanks again.
More than 30% of Americans own a dog. They make for great pictures and even serve as an inspiration for many artists. This week's First Experience visits the Somerville Manning Gallery in Greenville, where art has gone to the dogs. We get a look at how some famous artists have captured their dogs' images in some beautiful work showcasing man's best friend.
Welcome to Somerville Manning Gallery and our Man's Best Friend exhibition. Dogs symbolized to me ideas of loyalty, devotion, playfulness, unconditional love, wonderful attributes. People love dogs in general, and we noticed that when we had paintings and sculptures of dogs, the attention they received, so we decided to do an entire exhibition around it. The works of art range in a lot of varieties, from a display of Clayton Bright's tabletop dogs. I also have a painting by William Glackens. Glackens was the artist who took Albert Barnes to Europe and introduced him to the Impressionists. When you walk in, the first painting you're going to see is the Andrew Wyeth of Tempera all by itself, because it's a stellar work of his and it's really a museum quality painting. When you turn, then behind you there's a wall of frivolity. There's Dog Beach with bright colors and the dogs playing, and it's being flanked by an artist, Robert Jackson, who actually is from this area, and he's doing balloon dogs in his work. And I think I wanted to include one of the balloon dogs because I thought that was really funny. When we curated the exhibition, our idea was to look for paintings and sculptures where the dogs had a lot of personality. Not necessarily a straight portrait of somebody's dog, but where they're acting in a way that is enjoyable, or they emanate a personality out of the painting or the sculpture, where you get a good feeling out of it. I think they should enjoy it. I think that's the biggest part of it. We have such a range of work in the show that I think something for everybody.
You can check out the Man's Best Friend exhibit at the Somerville Manning Gallery through November 15th. Check out their website, somervillemanning.com, for more information.
Coming up next week on First, pop-up businesses are trying to take hold. What can Delaware do to give them an economic boost? And we head to the University of Delaware for a view of life on the Brandywine.
We'll hear from First contributor Karen Smiles with that story. That is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Nichelle Polston and Shirley Min, I'm Mark Eichman. Have a great week.
You to watch this station.